Welcome to Orbital Times podcast, and hello to everyone, whatever part of the globe you're from or happen to reside in. My name is Kelly Jo, and here we'll provide armchair conversations gathered from interviews and research reviews to explore the seen, the unseen, and the in-between of the supernatural paranormal phenomena, with topics that circle around spirit orbs, NDEs, OBEs, UFOs, time slips, mystical moments, higher consciousness, and more. I hope that this cast will be our meeting place and judge-free zone where we can explore, learn, and grow through the telling of. This cast will be launched on a monthly basis or a bi-weekly schedule whenever I'm able to make contact with those in the know for their telling of. Speaking of those in the know and the telling of, have you had mystical moments or other supernatural paranormal experiences? Care to share on this cast? Then consider stepping into the light with your telling of, or send in your monologue for me to read on this podcast. Simply email orbicaltimespodcast@gmail.com for a chance to contribute to this cast. In this episode of Orbital Times, I'm talking ghosts, as in the Ghostbuster ruling, which was the first case in the New York Supreme Court of the United States to rule that a house, which the owner had previously advertised to the public as haunted, was indeed legally haunted. Not so long ago, in 1967, but perhaps far away, depending on where you live, in conjunction to 1 Laveta Place, New York, a Mr. and Mrs. Ackley purchased a 1890 three-story, 4,628 square foot Victorian house located at the end of a dead end, or if you prefer, cul-de-sac, with a wraparound porch and a view of the Hudson River. At the time of their purchase, the home had 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, more than enough room to accommodate their 4 children. After a couple of decades of living in her home, Helen Ackley listed the home for sale with a broker by the name of Richard Ellis. In 1989, an offer of purchase plus a $32,500 deposit was issued for the home by a Jeffrey and Patricia Stambovsky. However, Stambovsky wanted to pull out of the $650,000 contract only after obtaining, so he claims, information from a prospective contractor about certain types of happenings at the home. In an online blog entitled Hudson Valley Views, the same broker, Richard Ellis, writes, quote, "After about a year, a buyer was interested and put a deposit down. Right before it closed, the seller, that would be Helen Ackley, asked us," by that he means Richard Ellis and the company he was working for, "to advise the buyers of the visitors." Mr. Ellis is referring to the ghost visitors in Helen's home, which Mr. Richard claimed he did. Unfortunately, there was no paper trail that could confirm that he did or his office did not take the requested action on behalf of Helen Ackley. Ellis states after having that conversation, Stambovsky, quote, still wanted to proceed and jokingly said that they would call in the Ghostbusters, referring to the popular movie of that time, end quote. So then to recap, Stambovsky wanted to proceed in the purchase of 1 Laveta Place until he didn't. He filed action against Helen after he had given a signed contract with a down payment. He claimed he never received any information from her or, I'm just guessing here, from Mr. Ellis regarding ghostly inhabitants and accused her of fraud via misrepresentation of the condition of the home, meaning the ghosts. Oh my, how times have changed. I'm just going to take a quick detour here. I remembered running across some stats a few years back from an online survey offered up by Realtor.ca, which, and thankfully, I was able to locate that article and then some. And here's what I found. In their 2017 online survey revealed in regards to haunted homes from 1,000 respondents, I'm assuming from the United States. Results. 33% of those surveyed are open to living in a haunted house, and 25% might be, and 42% are not open to the idea at all. Their 2018 online survey revealed that millennials were most likely to buy a haunted home if the seller sweetened the deal. And as for seniors, no deal would be good enough. If selling a haunted home, 34% of people would disclose everything to a prospective buyer, while only 22% would say nothing at all. Now, the latest survey that I could find by Realtor.ca is from 2020, which included more than 2,000 Americans and revealed that 13% believed they lived in a haunted home, and 54% had feels that their house was occupied prior to moving in. 56% of Americans who feel their house is haunted have not considered moving, but 62% of those surveyed claimed that they would not live in a home that was whispered to be haunted. Oh my. Well, perhaps times have not changed that much in regards to how people feel about being in a haunted home. Anyways, back to the case. Interestingly enough, the brokerage company that Helen had entrusted to forward her concerns to Mr. Stambovsky was never mentioned in the suit. Mr. Ellis, Helen's broker, wrote, quote, "And while my firm and I were released from the case, the owner was held liable." That's from the Hudson Valley Views. Did Helen really forget to tell Mr. Stambovsky? Perhaps she did omit to be transparent with him, since, according to Mr. Ellis, she left that detail with him. Still, it seems rather odd that she would purposely omit that nugget of information, given the fact of her almost decade-long transparency about her and her family's encounters with the home's paranormal activity, which she relayed not only to her broker, Mr. Ellis, but also to different media outlets, such as newspapers and a 1977 article in Reader's Digest, which she penned, entitled "Our Haunted House on the Hudson." Speaking of which, interested in knowing what some of those encounters were? And so was I. And now I'll read you excerpts of Helen's telling of her home's haunted happenings that she claims occurred at her one Laveta Place home. I saw our house for the first time on a hot July day in 1967. A bedraggled old Victorian. It had stood vacant for 7 years, but as I followed the real estate agent and my husband, George, into the spacious hall, I knew I was home. When I told them they could look through the house, 2 of the kids hung back. The others giggled. "They think there's ghosts in there. They're scared. Did you know you bought a haunted house?" Later in the day, the plumber who was recreating the water system asked me, "Are you planning to be here long, Mrs. Ackley?" "Until 4:30, Bob. I have to pick up my husband at 5. What's the matter? Have you run into problems?" Bob hesitated. "It's not that, Mrs. Ackley. I keep hearing footsteps on the stairs and walking around overhead. I must have run up and down those stairs 6 times the other day, and I couldn't find anybody. Well, I'm ready to go now, but I don't want to leave you here alone." A light fixture cord swaying over the family dining table on a windless day, then stopped in mid-swing as if by some unforeseen hand. French doors suddenly flung open, a casement window gaping. These performances were not given on command, but several friends did see the phenomena. Someone was standing beside me, very close beside me. Every hair on my neck and scalp stirred as I slowly turned my head. Nobody stood there, but an entity certainly did occupy that space. I've had those feelings. As I talked, I kept painting, but I felt the energy of those eyes focused on the nape of my neck. I looked over my shoulder again. He sat there in mid-air, smiling at me from the front of the cold fireplace. hands clasped around his crossed knees. He was nodding and rocking. He faded slowly, still smiling, and was gone. But I knew then that he approved of the work our family had lavished on our mutual home. What did he look like? He was the most cheerful and solid-looking little person I'd ever seen. A cap of white hair framed his round, apple-cheeked face, and there was piercing blue eyes under thick white eyebrows. His little blue suit was immaculate, the cuffs of the short, unbuttoned jacket turned back over ruffles at his wrists. "It's spooky, Mother," Cynthia, her daughter, explained. "Every morning at exactly the same time, my bed starts shaking. And if I don't get up right away, the bed shakes even harder." No, I wasn't drinking that day. No, the paint fumes hadn't got to me. And no, I don't know why I saw him then, and have never seen him since. I do know that he seemed happy to be there, and I was proud to meet him. It's worth noting that the 70s Reader's Digest offered up $3,000 to members of the public that submitted articles that circled around paranormal events. Ads were placed in the digest that stated, quote, "The Reader's Digest continues to offer $3,000 for 2,500-word chronicles of original experiences in the field of psychic phenomena, which can be verified through witnesses and appropriate documentation." There was a really nice pocket of cash in those days, I guess even today. What are the chances that there may have been a few individuals out there that submitted a story or two which might have been able to be verified, for a price? I'm just saying. Today, one can still submit a story to the Reader's Digest and receive a free subscription, which would not be so great for those living in Canada, as the Canadian version of the magazine is closing as of March 2024, after 76 years. Back to the case. The court dismissed the complaint and ruled that Helen did not have a duty to disclose the haunted home's happenings due to New York's "Let the buyer beware" clause, meaning the onus is on the buyer prior to the purchase of to do their due diligence to make inquiries about the home. Justice Edward Lenner ruled in State Supreme Court in Manhattan that Mr. Stambovsky had no right to his $32,500 down payment. Stambovsky then appealed, and in 1991 the case was heard by the New York Supreme Court, which in the end held that, quote, "a house which the owner had previously advertised to the public as haunted by ghosts legally was haunted for rescission brought by a subsequent purchaser of the house," end quote. In other words, the house would become the first home to be declared legally haunted in the United States, a case that would become fondly, or fictitiously, referred to as the BUSTER ruling. The Stambovskys were paid back most of their down payment. Helen Ackley eventually moved, and in 2003, Helen passed away. The Stambovsky versus Ackley case has since been taught in some law schools and has been cited by other courts. According to Mr. Ellis, as a result of that ruling, the real estate license law in the state of New York changed, putting onus on the broker to automatically inform buyers about ghosts, if in fact the homeowner disclosed that. I'm not sure if the disclosure referred to public or also included in confidence. The stigmatized property law, which entails that realtors do not have to tell buyers about paranormal activity or other types of issues such as murders, deaths, suicides, unless asked. In some states, material defects or patent defects are the only required disclosures. In other states, the seller must disclose any emotional defects, aka stigmatized properties. In Canada, the laws regarding the disclosure of stigmatized properties vary by province. According to Mackesy Smy's blog, hope I have your name right, entitled Stigmatized Properties, Will I Need to Sell for Less? Quote, in all provinces of Canada, except Quebec, there are no laws requiring sellers to disclose property stigma. In the absence of any rules, the onus is on the buyer. In other words, buyer, or for that matter, seller, beware. Something I found interesting, given the topic in part 1 of this 2-part little series. The home at 1 Laveta Place, New York, was repainted by 2018 from a red color to a blue. And not just any blue. Perhaps appropriately enough, a haint or haunt blue. Interested in seeing images of said house? And take a peek at my website, orbicaltimes.com. This concludes my little series on haint blue and the Ghostbuster ruling, or the Ghostbuster law. I would like to keep this cast a commercial-free zone. In light of that, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channels. All my orb videos are available by using the handle @SpiritOrbSightings, or visit my new channel with the handle @OrbicalTimesPodcast. If you've already subscribed, many thanks. For blogs, episodes, show notes, bios, images, and video, please visit www.orbicaltimes.com. If you enjoyed an episode, then please give a like or a share on whatever podcatcher you happen to use. If you've already done so, much appreciated. Thank you for taking your time to visit these Orbical Times. Orbical Times podcast is written, produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kelly Jo, at Studio Spare Room.